Good evening and hello there, I'm Abdurrahim Kashour and this is Al24 News, streaming live from the capital Algiers. And coming up next in our news program. The Kremlin declared likewise grim note, saying it saw little ground for optimism in resolving the crisis after the US this week again rejected Russia's main demands. And Joe Biden has warned Ukraine's president of full invasion in the coming month. The new military leader of Burkina Faso, Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba, has promised a return to the normal constitutional order when the conditions are right. Australia pledged $700 million to protect the Great Barrier Reef. Scott Morrison unveils spending 7 months after UNESCO threatens to put site on danger list. Salvadorians have mixed feelings about the International Monetary Fund. The financial institution this week called on the government to change course and stop using Bitcoin as a legal tender. Hello again and welcome. Those were today's headline. Following a phone call between the presidents of the United States and Ukraine, Washington has sent a request to convene a United Nations Security Council meeting on Ukraine's tension on January 31st. This comes while Russia says it was and it does want war with Ukraine. Nabil Khazino not follow.
After discussions between the US President Joe Biden and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, the latter said Moscow might invade Ukraine next month. But Russia denied that, after its foreign minister Sergei Lavrov said Moscow does not want war.
There
won't be a war as far as it depends on the Russian Federation. We don't want a war.
An answer that seems not to convince the White House, which convened a meeting of the United Nations Security Council on a potential invasion of the Kremlin to Kiev. US Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, said in a statement that the Council's full attention is needed now.
This is not a moment to wait and see. The Council's full attention is needed now, and we look forward to direct and purposeful discussion on Monday.
This followed a shared phone call between US President Joe Biden and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in which they discussed de-escalation efforts in Ukraine and also possibilities for financial support to the Eastern European country. Recently, claims of Russia's potential invasion of Kiev have become frequent in Ukraine and Western states. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov called such reports empty and groundless escalation of tensions, underlining that Russia does not pose any threat to anyone. But the peaceful atmosphere in Kiev hides a real danger for some Ukrainians, who even started to clean their weapons and to get ready for the war.
In same line of thoughts, Russia sees no position no positive reaction from the US on Moscow's main security demands. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said, adding that President Vladimir Putin would decide our own next steps.
It contains a reaction allowing us to expect serious dialogue to start. As for the main question, there is no positive reaction to it in the document. The main question is our clear message that we consider further NATO expansion to the East and weapons deployment, which can threaten the Russian Federation, unacceptable.
The United States called on China to use its influence with Russia to urge a diplomatic situation, or a solution to the Ukrainian crisis. US Under Secretary of State for Political Affairs Victoria Nuland said US messages to Beijing has been very clear. We are calling on Beijing to use its influence with Moscow to urge diplomacy solution.
We are calling on Beijing to use its influence with Moscow to urge diplomacy, because if there is a conflict in Ukraine, it is not going to be good for China either.
To a different matter now, on the eve of a regional gathering that might aim to censure Ouagadougou, the head of Burkina Faso's new military junta asked for international support in the first significant public statement Thursday. Sofiane Kanchouri has more to be explained. Let's follow this report.
West African leaders are expected to meet to discuss how to respond to a coup in conflict-torn Burkina Faso earlier this week. The latest spate of military takeovers in the area that has fueled worries of future instability.
En ces moments particulièrement difficiles,
at this particularly difficult time for our country, Burkina Faso needs its partners more than ever. This is why I call on the international community to support our country so that it can emerge from this crisis as quickly as possible and resume its march towards development.
Following coups in August 2020 and September 2021, the 15 members Economic Community of West African States regional group halted and levied sanctions on Burkina Faso's neighbors Mali and Guinea. Its unusual virtual summit on Friday comes only hours after Burkina Faso's new military ruler called for international support in his first speech to the country, since leading the ouster of democratically elected President Roch Kabore on Monday.
This is why I am committed to conveying the living forces of the nation to agree on a roadmap that will aim to project and achieve the recovery desired for all Burkinabés.
ECOWAS released a statement on Tuesday saying it strongly condemns the coup, accusing the military of pushing Kabore to quit under fear, intimidation and pressure. Kabore, 64, remains imprisoned, with the UN spearheading efforts for his release.
Senegal's foremost telecom service provider Digicel yesterday said it has restored the internet connectivity via satellite link for all its customers. A new batch of emergency supplies delivered by China today arrived in Nuku Alufa, the capital city of Tonga. These supplies include drinking water, food, personal protective equipment, tents, food in beds, and water purifiers and walkie-talkies. 6 young people are suing the operator of Japan's damaged Fukushima nuclear plant, claiming they developed a thyroid cancer as a result of radiation exposure following the plant's meltdown. Marim Zian on what's follow.
The plaintiffs, who are currently between the ages of 17 and 27, were residing in the Fukushima region on March 11, 2011, when a massive earthquake created a tsunami that resulted in the nuclear accident. Their lawyers launched the first ever class action lawsuit against the plant's operator, Tokyo Electric Power Company, on Thursday. The 6 plaintiffs are demanding a compensation of 4.8 million euros. As the lawyers marched in to file the lawsuit, dozens of supporters gathered outside the Tokyo District Court. The case revolves around whether or not there is a link between the disaster's radiation and thyroid cancer. However, an expert panel, convened by the regional administration previously, stated that there was no causative association, and the UN investigation released last year indicated that a decade after the tragedy, the Fukushima nuclear disaster had not directly impacted inhabitants' health.
I participate in this action against TEPCO, filing the suit with the Tokyo District Court. When I was told I had cancer, I was told clearly there was no causal link between my thyroid cancer and the Fukushima nuclear accident. I still remember how I felt at the time and the tears of my mom.
The plaintiffs' lawyers, on the other hand, claimed that none of their clients' tumors were inherited and that the condition was almost certainly caused by radiation exposure. At the time of the incident, the plaintiffs were between the ages of 6 and 16. Between 2012 and 2018, they were all diagnosed with thyroid cancer. 2 of them had only one side of their thyroid removed, while the other 4 had their thyroids completely removed, which required them to take hormonal medications for the rest of their lives. The group's lead lawyer Kineshi Iru said that some plaintiffs have had difficulties advancing to higher education and finding jobs, and have even gave up on their dreams for their future.
We have not been able to communicate these facts to other people as there has been discrimination against Fukushima residents since the disaster. We've spent 10 years in fear, unable to speak.
TEPCO spokesman Takahiro Yamato said that the company will deal with the legal complaint sincerely after paying attention to the details of the demands and claims.
The Australian government has pledged to spend more than $700 million on new protection measures for the Great Barrier Reef, hoping to improve the water quality. The commitment comes ahead of this year's election and sets a higher bar than the Labour Party's $163 million pledge on the reef protection made this month. It also comes only 6 months after the Australian government became involved in arguments with UNESCO, which had planned to put the Great Barrier Reef on its danger list to prompt action to protect it from climate change and development.
We're committing that $1 billion over the next 9 years. That's on top of the $2 billion we've already invested. That is caring for this reef, whether it's the science, whether it's continuing our battle with the crown of thorns starfish, improving the water quality. And what this plan and package is all about is working together. Well, we've committed to net zero by 2050 and we've reduced emissions by over 20%. Our government's put $2 billion already into world-leading management of this reef. And now we've put another $1 billion in. And so I'd say to those that they need to keep up with just how much we're doing. The reef has always been a priority for our government. And it's been a priority because we know how important it is to the lives of people in far north Queensland.
Salvadorian President Nayib Bukele announced a plan to create an entire Bitcoin city using volcanic energy. This comes after El Salvador became the first country in the world to use Bitcoin as a national currency.
If you can buy clothes, snacks, and the daily newspapers using Bitcoin, then you are in El Salvador, the first country in the world to announce using Bitcoin as a national currency.
But in 4 months of Bitcoin, over 4 million people have become digitalized. And the vast majority of them didn't have bank accounts. And that's over 2/3 of the population.
Bitcoin City.
Now, the Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele wants his country to take this step even further after he announced his country's plan to make an entire city based on the cryptocurrency. But how can this even be possible? The president said the city will be constructed only by using volcanic energy.
Because this is a fully ecological city that works and it's energized by a volcano.
The city will have the shape of a symbol of the Bitcoin cryptocurrency and will be fueled by the energy coming out of the nearby volcanoes, which will also be used to generate more Bitcoins. In El Zonte, a surfing hotspot, some tourists and the 3,000 residents who live here are now used to the cryptocurrency in their daily life.
I need to do some shopping.
Tell me.
I need $2 of eggs, onion, tomato, green peppers.
Tomato?
Green peppers.
$1?
Oh yeah.
Which app?
Bitcoin Beach.
But others in El Salvador's capital, San Salvador, protested against the move to make Bitcoin legal tender in the country. The International Monetary Fund has also urged the South American country to drop Bitcoin as legal tender and better regulate the digital wallet the government created and promoted to its citizens.
Xiomara Castro, who was sworn in as the first female president, faces a challenge of political crisis over the next head of the Congress amid severe conditions in the country live in. Islam Sidon Watfolo.
On Thursday, Xiomara Castro was sworn in as Honduras' first female president. After President Juan Orlando Hernandez's 2 terms, the former First Lady takes over.
I promise to be faithful to the Republic comply with and enforce the Constitution and its laws.
The country, meanwhile, is in crisis over who would lead the newly elected assembly. 2 opposing factions within the victorious Libre Party have each proposed a candidate for the position. Talks to find a settlement came to a halt. Vice President Kamala Harris of the United States attended the inauguration and spoke on migration from the Central American country to the United States. The ceremony was also attended by King Philip of Spain and Taiwan Vice President William Lai.
We are going to concentrate our greatest efforts on 4 sectors permanently demanded by citizens: education, health, security, and employment.
Her inauguration was presided over by candidates Luis Redondo and Jorge Calix, who had the support of Castro and many members of the party. Castro offered Jorge Calix of the role of the cabinet coordinator, but has yet to react. Castro had reached an arrangement with Salvador Nasrallah, the leader of the Savior Party of Honduras, which was crucial to her win in the November elections. He agreed to drop out of the presidential contest in exchange for the position of vice president and a promise to back Redondo as Congress president. A number of Castro dissenters, on the other hand, argued that the Congress should be led by the party with the most members. Following the resolution of the political crisis, Castro, the wife of former President Manuel Zelaya, now confronts the difficult challenge of fixing the country's socioeconomic problem.
We want justice for our fallen. They did not deserve this, and neither do the Honduran people. I have no words. I ache for my brother in heaven.
Officials estimate that 71% of Hondurans live in poverty. Drug trafficking gangs had also fueled violence in the country.
And now for more international news, let's follow this roundup by Marwa Blair.
North Korea confirmed that missile test firings were carried out on Tuesday and Thursday, according to a report by North Korean Central News Agency today. According to the agency, the Academy of Defense Sciences of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea conducted test firings to improve the long-range cruise missile system and other test firings to confirm the power of the conventional warhead of the tactical surface-to-surface guided missile on Tuesday and Thursday, respectively. Baghdad International Airport was attacked by 6 rockets, causing severe material damage to a civilian plane that was parked on the airport runways at dawn on Friday. A few missiles landed near the U.S. Camp Victory Air Base and the runway of the airport. The frequency of rocket attacks on the airport compound has increased recently. Police investigation about COVID-19 lockdown break-in gatherings in Downing Street in England could be further delayed after the police asked for the report to make only minimal reference to those events. Police say they did not ask for Partygate report to be delayed, but want to avoid prejudice to their inquiry. The Metropolitan Police said in a statement, the Met did not ask for any limitations on other events in the report, or for the report to be delayed, but we have had ongoing contact with the Cabinet Office, including on the content of the report, to avoid any prejudice to our investigation. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin directed his staff on Thursday to prepare an action plan for improving how the Pentagon minimizes and responds to civilian fatalities caused by American airstrikes as soon as possible. Civilian security, he said, was critical to U.S. military success and a moral necessity. In a communication to top civilian and military authorities, Austin stated that he expects the plan to arrive in his office within 90 days. He believes it should detail the actions the Pentagon will take, as well as the resources needed to execute recommendations from prior assessment of the subject. After the tropical storm Anna struck 3 countries in West Africa, the death toll has risen to 77 amid struggles to fix damages infrastructure and aid afflicted people. On Thursday, Madagascar marked 48 states of death. Malawi reported 11 and 18 died in Mozambique. Rescue workers and authorities over the 3 countries were assessing the full extent of the damage on Friday morning.
Our own reporter, Miriam Zian, this time will take us for another international news break, but within the economic sector.
Apple announced record holiday quarter revenue on Thursday, topping expectations thanks to strong iPhone demand in China and the company's ability to overcome supply chain issues and Omicron variant interruptions. In October, Apple CEO Tim Cook warned that processor shortages were hurting the production of most Apple products, potentially costing the company $6 billion in sales. Last year, the U.S. economy grew at its quickest rate in decades as it recovered from the pandemic lockdowns. According to official figures from the Commerce Department, the economy increased at its fastest rate since 1984. However, as the government reduces stimulus spending and the Federal Reserve rises interest rates, economists predict GDP to weaken this year. High inflation and threats from new COVID versions like Omicron are among the other dangers. On the other hand, the World Bank predicts that the U.S. economy will increase by 3.7% this year, in line with earlier estimates. Brussels has announced that it will file a complaint with the World Trade Organization against China's alleged discriminatory trade practices against Lithuania. China's trade policies, according to the European Commission, are damaging Lithuanian exporters and affecting other EU single market exports. In a statement, European Trade Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis said, I quote, "Launching a WTO dispute is not a measure we take lightly," claiming that China's actions were endangering the single market's integrity. Prosecutors in Peru are seeking an 18-month ban on the president and 3 other executives of Repsol S.A.'s local refinery from leaving the country while an investigation into a massive oil leak is performed. Last week, the authorities claimed Repsol dumped 6,000 barrels of oil into the water near the La Pampilla refinery on January 15 after anomalous waves were produced by a volcano eruption near Tonga.
Netflix has released the new Korean horror drama on Friday following the massive success of Squid Game. All of Us Are Dead is intended to attract more audiences who have stressed engaging in Korean content. Islam Seed on What Follow.
Down your spine. This month, All of Us Are Dead joins the service, presented a group of teenagers stuck in their high school as a zombie outbreak closes.
Definitely so scary. Now to sport, to the World Cup qualification. Ecuador is 1 win away from returning to the World Cup after 1-1 home draw with South American qualifying leaders Brazil. Coach Gustavo Alvaro's team will qualify to play in Qatar if beats Peru next week. As well on Thursday, Chile, once a force in the region, saw its chances shrink dramatically after a 2-1 home loss to the second place Argentina, who had rested Lionel Messi for the game. The Chileans will have to pull good result at Bolivia and Brazil, with their last match in the competition likely to be Santiago against vicious rival Uruguay. On the other hand, Uruguay meanwhile rose back to contention after a 1-0 win at Paraguay with a goal by veteran Luis Suarez. It was the team's first win for the new coach Diego Alonso, who took over the veteran Oscar Tabarez, who was fired due to poor results. Canada and United States stayed on course for World Cup qualification with crucial wins on Thursday. Canada looking to qualify for the World Cup for the first time since 1986. Scored a disciplined 2-0 away victory over Honduras in San Pedro Sula to stay on the top of the CONCACAF standings with 19 points from 9 games. The USA desperate to qualify for this year's tournament after the shock failure to reach the 2018 World Cup in Russia. Boasted the chances of qualification with 1-0 goal over El Salvador in Columbus, Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Take care of yourself and have a blessed evening.